it's far easier to access physiotherapy than it is mental health.
I am proud of my mad identity. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of the fact that my brain is different.
This week, we're discussing mental health.
Deep conversations, real honest stories, and complex, relevant issues all examined through a disability lens. This is In Focus.
Hi, I'm April Hubbard. Welcome to In Focus. Jay Everett is a retired bosun in the Canadian Navy. He speaks openly about his ongoing mental health journey and how his post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and quadriplegia play a role in his overall health. Jay is the president of Sail Able Nova Scotia, and he lives in Halifax. Thanks for joining me virtually, Jay.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, April.
So Jay, I want to start by hearing a little bit about your mental health experiences in the early years of your life.
I've had mental health issues throughout my life. It's something that's common and runs in my family. Everybody in my immediate family tends to suffer anxiety or other mental health issues such as depression, PTSD. When I was young, my parents were physically, mentally abusive. The first time that I was in therapy was at age 14, and I've been in and out of therapy since then.
What was your life like as a young man, and when did you first experience post-traumatic stress disorder?
I joined the military when I was 18, joined the Navy, and had a lot of fun with that. I was loving it. I was thriving. I was getting promoted at a good rate. I loved the outdoors, loved hiking, loved everything outdoors. Went to the gym 6 times a week. And so I was very active myself in life. However, my first case of post-traumatic stress disorder was Swiss Air Flight 111. I helped clean up the debris after the plane crash in the St. Margaret's Bay. And then my second and most severe issue of PTSD was a close family tragedy that happened. Then, of course, my accident when I was 29, 3 years later.
Let's talk about the period following your motorcycle accident. You went from being a very physically active person to lying in a hospital bed the next day. How did you deal with the wave of emotions that came with such a huge change?
I first said about my being a quadriplegic, I was saying that I can bitch, moan, scream, and cry, but at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. And so I was accepting of that very early on. However, once all my supports got pulled out from underneath me, that's when everything came crashing down. It's when the house cards fell.
And what were these supports that were there in the beginning and then disappeared later on?
When you have a long hospital stay, you have many guests and visitors coming in the beginning, and that tends to wean off as the months go by. I was in for the hospital for 18 months. So after a year, you're starting to see less visitors and just family. And then my fiance, she left me, and I lost my career at the same time. And so everything that was my identity was taken away in an instant. And at that moment, the gravity of the situation really hit. And that's when I think the first time that I really started to process the fact that I was in a chair and my life changed.
So in that moment when you were processing so many new emotions, you were certainly grieving. Were there other emotions that came up in that moment as well?
Yes, there was a lot of anger at myself directed inward, anger directed outward. The people that had distanced themselves that I thought were good friends or great friends had a large effect and consequence on my mental health. There was a lot of people that I figured would be sticking around and sticking through this. And I honestly wasn't prepared for such a friend shedding. It was one of the hardest parts.
So, did you feel that your mental health was supported by the healthcare system in the early days in the hospital?
I didn't find there was much mental health help while I was at the hospital. It wasn't something that they were focused on. It was more healing body than healing mind.
That's a really interesting way of putting that, and something I've heard about the healthcare system a lot. They don't always think of the person as a whole. They'll focus on the physical injuries, but don't always think about what the physical injuries can do to a person's mental health as well.
Correct. It's the unseen injury where it's usually harder to treat than the actual physical. It's far easier to access physiotherapy than it is mental health.
Yeah, it's a real problem with our healthcare system. The subject of mental health is so important, and we're just getting started. More with our guest Jay Everett when we return from this short break.
In Focus will be right back. You're watching In Focus.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jay Everett about mental health and disability. So Jay, before the break, we were talking about adapting after your accident. In addition to quadriplegia, you also have a traumatic brain injury. How did that affect your healing and your mental health?
That was very hard for my mental health because you go from firing on all cylinders to a lot of challenging, just even word recall and trying to get thoughts properly composed. It was a frontal lobe injury, so that's where a lot of your personality, your ability to cope with things, social cues come from, is in the frontal lobe. And that's why I've had a lot of problems making friendships and maintaining them. I can go a month and it'll seem like a week sometimes because of my brain injury. And it's not one of those things that I often tell people about because I find I'm going to get judged by that. There's almost a stigma that comes with that.
Yeah, that's very valid. I'm curious, do people respond differently to your physical disabilities compared to your mental health disabilities?
Yes, the two are separated and looked at differently. I mean, the physical side, most of the people that I interact with have commonalities. So the physical side isn't much. However, the general public will, as we are people of curiosity, will judge and stare. And the mental health side is still not as understood by people.
And I wonder, when you're having a bad day with your physical disabilities, does that make it harder to deal with your mental health?
Yes, it compounds it, of course. If your body isn't right, if your body is in pain, it's going to affect your mental health. It's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect your disposition towards yourself and others.
And it's been really difficult for me to watch in my disability community how often we're losing people and how young we're losing them, and how we're constantly going through this state of mourning. Is that something you've experienced?
Unfortunately, yes, I have. I've seen some people that are young in life and still you'd think they have lots to give, and they are asking for medically assisted dying. And it's really sad to see. We've lost enough people in our community due to mental health issues that I would like to see the government put a lot more money towards mental health, especially after coming out of the pandemic. People that were fine are no longer. People that weren't are doing worse. So we really need some help overall as a society.
So, shifting to brighter times now, what are some tools that you've used to deal with your anxiety and depression?
I use conventional tools such as psychologist and medication. And I also use friends and sport. And for one would be my sailing that I do. And when you're out on the water, you have no worries. That's my happy spot. So when I end up coming back, any worries that I had are gone. I also am fortunate to have a 2-year-old niece who really helps keep my spirits up. She's the apple of my eye. She really is.
I love seeing that smile on your face. You definitely transformed there. Jay, what is something that you wish people understood about your mental health?
What I'd like people to understand about my mental health is that it changes. And like anyone else, I'm going to have my good days. I'm going to have my bad days. And also, I would like people to know about the hidden side, which is the mental health side, is a bigger iceberg than the physical side. And it's one that gets chipped away very slowly.
Jay, thanks so much for your openness.
Thank you, April. I always appreciate the chance to talk about mental health.
Coming up, mad pride activism.
I find it very empowering to be part of the Mad Pride movement.
In Focus will be right back. You're watching In Focus.
The woman in our next story is claiming her identity proudly and without shame, while offering a new way to think about mental health.
I'm a person that loves color, that loves beauty. I love beautiful things. I love glittery things. I love flowers. I love nature. Even if I'm creating an art piece about mental health, it's still going to be colorful and bold.
Multidisciplinary artist, writer, and arts instructor Hanan Hazime is a Lebanese-Canadian Shia Muslim who lives in Toronto. She identifies as neurodiverse and mad.
The term MAD is used by psychiatric consumers, survivors, folks with mental illnesses, mental health challenges, in order to reclaim words that have been used against us. So MAD is the most common one, but there's also terms like nutter or psycho. And it's much in the same way that queer folks, reclaimed the term queer. So it is a very empowering movement for me. I am proud of my mad identity. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of the fact that my brain is different. This is the brain that I was born with, and I find it very empowering to be part of the Mad Pride movement. So part of my Mad Pride activism has looked like going onto units at CAMH, which is the Center for Addictions and Mental Health here in Toronto, and going onto these units and facilitating art workshops. So it's working with other folks who have lived experience directly and trying to enact positive change in their lives directly instead of waiting for privileged folks to do it for us.
Hanan believes the binary between illness and wellness is an illusion.
I think it's a spectrum. I don't think you are either sick or you're either healthy, because there's a fluidity between the two. So even for somebody like me with a chronic illness, there are days where I'm closer, to being healthy on that spectrum. It's a good day, I feel well. And then there are days where I'm really, really sick and I'm really unwell, and it goes up and down. It's like the beat of a heart, because healing isn't linear. It's a lifelong journey.
Through her writing, advocacy, and social media, Hanan is working to address the lack of people like her in art and media.
The term symbolic annihilation refers to the erasure of marginalized people in the media. So if you don't see yourself in the media that you're consuming, you may feel unrepresented or misrepresented, and that may lead folks to feel like their experiences don't matter. I will also say, there hasn't been representation in the media of folks with disabilities or mental health experiences, which are also part of my intersectional identities. And if there has been, it's usually not been about, a mad, disabled Muslim woman, like that specific representation. So I've had to come up with it myself. And I think if that representation was already present, then I would have perhaps been writing or exploring those parts of my identity from a younger age and not when I was in grad school. Because that's how long it took for me to finally start writing about my own lived experiences, and to see that they are valid and they are important and they deserve to be heard and voiced.
And those lived experiences include mad joy.
This idea of mad joy is very important to me, because as I've taken on this identity publicly, I think there's just this constant expectation that I am in misery all the time, that I'm always suffering. And that's not true, because I do find joy. Sometimes I have to find joy in the little things. And I don't just want the story of my suffering to be shared. Sometimes I get really tired of being called resilient and strong, and those things are positive things, but after a while, I just want people to see me as a human being. There are some things that are incredible about me that have nothing to do with my trauma or my illness or my mental health, and I want to share those too. And so all of that for me is mad joy. It's to say, you know what, I'm mad and I'm here and I deserve to be happy.
As a Mad Pride activist, Hanan wants to make space for mad talent to thrive.
Being a mad artist has been a struggle, because it's full of precarious employment, full of gig work, where I feel like I have to work twice as hard as able-bodied folks, able-minded folks to get to where I am. I guess what I want to say, to whoever's watching this, if they have that privilege to, raise up the voices of mad folks, neurodiverse folks, disabled folks, give us space and give us an opportunity to showcase our talents and our skills, because we will blow you away.
Mental and physical health are closely related, and we need to pay equal attention to both. There are still too many barriers to accessing help, barriers heightened for those with intersecting identities. Those of us who are able must normalize talking about our mental health and celebrating the many ways our minds work and process information. We hope that this episode has encouraged you to start these conversations with the people in your life. That's it for In Focus this week. Thanks for joining us.
Host April Hubbard, producer Wendy Purvis, videographers Andrew Pickup, Darcy Toni, editors Andrew Pickup, Roland Borchert, freelance camera Bryan Roy, reporter Jillian Gillis, narrator Grant Hardy, media accessibility specialist Ron Rickford, audio post Mark Phoenix, graphics Mike Smith. Opening theme package composed by Matthew Monius for Matt Mac Music. Senior producer Michelle Dudas. President and CEO David Errington. Copyright 2022 Accessible Media Incorporated.